Welcome back, movie enthusiasts, to another episode of Cinema Central. I'm your host, DJ Ace, and it took me a little longer to see this movie due to some unforeseen circumstances, but after having seen it, I can finally talk about A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, the biopic about Mr. Rogers starring Tom Hanks. A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood is a great, heartwarming film that I think has a lot of benefits for people watching considering the world we live in. The movie highlights the life of a man who is known for his overwhelming kindness to other people, even complete strangers. Mr. Rogers is played masterfully by Tom Hanks as he does a fantastic job portraying the real-life person that is Fred Rogers. The movie itself, though, is based on an article written by Tom Juno for Esquire magazine in 1998. Keeping this in mind, the movie actually centers around the writer Lloyd Vogel, played by Matthew Rhys. As you can guess, they did change the name of the author of the original article for this movie, but that has very little bearing on the story itself. Ultimately, this film is probably the most heartwarming, feel-good movie of the year that gives us an honest look at probably the most honest man on the planet who touched millions of people throughout his life and still manages to speak directly to the viewer just like in the old show. Those were my initial impressions of the movie. The rest is going to be spoilers, but again, we keep running into this problem this year. But I am talking about real people and real events, so can we really call them spoilers? Let me know in the comments below. There are plenty of places you can look to learn more about this film, like what was factual and what wasn't, and feel free to watch those, but I'm not going to focus on those details so much in this review. The two main details that are important, though, is that they changed the name of the author in the movie, and also a lot of his family dynamics were altered as well. But the main thing that is constant is that Lloyd is still a reporter with a sort of bad reputation and does get sent on this Mr. Rogers profile, which he doesn't want to do. Speaking of Mr. Rogers, Tom Hanks, as we all know, is a master, and he does this role basically to perfection, and quite simply, he is one of the most prolific actors of our time. The dude has 2 Oscars, for crying out loud. But again, I obviously adored his performance in this movie. The one thing that consistently freaked me out, though, is when he would speak directly at the camera. Like, I know that's how the old show worked, but it was no less unsettling because it was like twofold, because you got Tom Hanks playing Mr. Rogers doing a TV show speaking to the viewer but at the same time speaking to us, and this is getting convoluted, but we're talking like 8 walls being broken or something, but that's beside the point. It is remarkable. Another part of the movie, though, that kind of threw me through a loop was that scene when Lloyd passed out on the set of the Mr. Rogers Neighborhood and had that super trippy dream sequence where he was like a puppet in the Mr. Rogers set. And yeah, it was wonky, dude. I'm not gonna lie. It was pretty wonky and it threw me off for a minute. But otherwise, this movie was still pretty fun and great to watch. The cinematography for this movie was something I also really enjoyed because whenever there was a scene transition, they used the old Mr. Rogers set to do it. But not only that, they kept the same quality whenever they did it by switching back to 4/3 aspect ratio and then back to 16:9 when it was the actual movie. I love that they did that, and for all the non-tech people listening, the difference between 4/3 and 16:9 is standard definition and high definition, or HD, and because the Mr. Rogers show was done ages ago before HD existed, all of his stuff was in standard definition and thus the 4/3 aspect ratio. The original TV show ran from 1968 to 2001, and I can tell you, I remember watching that show as a kid. I don't remember it that well, but I do remember having watched it, and you know, the whole show was aimed at children, and because it ran for so long, multiple generations know about Mr. Rogers, and this movie was just such a big shot of nostalgia for a lot of people, I think. Not so much for me, but certainly for a lot of people. And I loved all the interactions between Lloyd and Fred in this movie, just how Lloyd was so against doing this whole thing and Fred would just deflect all of his questions. And props to the acting of Matthew Rhys, because you could just tell Mr. Rogers was getting under his skin being so unapologetically nice to him and being genuinely interested in Lloyd's struggles, and I liked it a lot. So that's about all I can think to say about this film. Again, it is the feel-good movie of the year, very well acted and shot. I fully expect to hear Tom Hanks' name again at the Oscars coming up in a few months. I also think there's plenty of wisdom to be gained from this movie and relevance to today's world and society. Also, you can actually read the real article, Can You Say Hero, online. It is just a quick Google search away. That's all I have to say about A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Thanks for listening. I'm DJ Ace. Until next time, neighbor.
Booyah!